called the Don River and Central Waterfront Wet Weather Flow System, multi-year project, billions of dollar cost, huge tunnels under Toronto, so that the sewers run into the treatment plant and are treated before being released in the lake, instead of the current situation, which is where you get the storm sewers and the really nasty sewers combining in a big rainfall, and it all ends up in the lake through what are called CSOs, combined sewer outlets. This project will fix it, but it's a long time frame. Won't be complete till the end of the 2030s, should it be accelerated, or parts of it accelerated. That would be something I think we should maybe talk about in 2024. Ontario Place Battle, most of us have heard of it. It's been in the papers. And we're gonna, I think Norm's here, I don't know, or Rick, somebody will tell us about it. Basically, the Ontario government is bent on putting a big spa built by Austrian company Therm there. A lot of people have objected. It involves cutting down trees, and we're not clear how much of the public land would actually be left. There's an issue about the parking. The province seems to have committed to very expensive parking with an estimated cost, underground parking with an estimated cost north of $300 million at public expense to support this private company, which will have a long-term lease. So the city has made a deal which it seems to amount to the city won't object to it in return for the province taking the DVP and the Gardner off its hands. The city has, of course, fiscal problems and would welcome not having to pay for those highways. So we'll hear more about that from some of our guests. People probably have strong opinions. Quayside, going ahead, used to be Sidewalk Labs of Google, no longer. It's now Waterfront Toronto project. Planning is well along. 5 big development blocks. It looks very nice in the pictures. A community forest, 2 acres. Also Canada's largest timber building. Some unknown big cultural feature on the lake. I've heard various things about when shovels may be in the ground. I think the best estimate I've heard is maybe 2025. Western Beaches Public Realm Plan. The city is looking at trying to do something to fix up the Western Beaches. That's Humber Bay, basically. There's a group out there called the West End Beaches Association, which is essentially various boating clubs out there, the Boulevard Club, Argonaut Rowing, Sunnyside Paddling, Toronto Sailing and Canoe Club, and they formed this group called WEBSA. They had a great meeting on November 25th, which I attended. Basically, the city has asked for input. There's a website that you can go to called where you Google Toronto Western Beaches Public Life Study. The link's in my paper, but there's a 2-month period to comment and say, I like this, I don't like that about the waterfront. The last day, however, to comment is December 13th, 2023. That is tomorrow. If you want to put in a comment on that, you got to do it more or less right away. They have a plan also, they mean WEBSA. WEBSA has a plan to have islands maybe in Humber Bay. They've got ideas about the breakwater. It's all interesting. It to some extent follows the inspiration of Walter Kem, who's been a speaker, one of our speakers, who loves Humber Bay, has thought a lot about enhancing it and making it a beautiful feature of our city. So that's something to keep your eye on for next year. Rebel Nightclub, also Cabana Pool Bar. I was involved, I'm a lawyer, I was involved in years of litigation on this. The upshot was that the License Appeal Tribunal at various levels of court said that there should be no amplified music on the patio. It's a bit complicated. That was the license application was by a subsidiary of the actual operator. So that meant that although the subsidiary couldn't get a license, the existing operation could carry on the way they were with amplified music on the patio. The regulator of liquor licenses has now brought an application to say, no, your license can't have amplified music either. It should match this, the outcome of all of that litigation. That was a separate hearing. The last oral arguments were today, as I understand it. I haven't been involved in the sort of sequel, son of litigation. So we'll see what happens on that. We're talking about a matter of balance here. Do we really want to have loud music over the harbor? Maybe not. Marine use study, Waterfront Toronto was looking at whether there should be sea buses. Sea buses would be kind of possibly public transit in the form of kind of waterborne buses that would go from one part of the harbor to another, maybe over to the island, follow various routes. Is there a point at which there would be just simply too much traffic on the water? Those of us in kayaks are always concerned one of those things is going to hit us or a taxi is going to run us over. So there are concerns, but on the other hand, there are people who need to get around different parts of the harbor, and having just one terminal on the city side for a ferry is maybe not going to work in the future. So that's being thought about, and that's a good thing. Canadian National Exhibition Master Planning Process. We've got Rick Amos here to talk about it. Basically, the community wanted to have a conversation and a careful study of what should happen with the CNE, which is a large bit of land, as we all know. That's been sort of sidelined by big dramatic projects suddenly announced for Waterfront, such as the terminal of the Ontario line, apparently going to be built there. Also, the aforementioned parking lot for the Therm Spa. So we'll see. Rick will tell us more about it. Bathurst Key Neighborhood Plan. I hope Brian Bowen is here. He is the mastermind, works for Toronto Parks, behind this beautification of the malting towers at the Eastern Gap near the airport ferry. The malting towers are going to be an art gallery in the lower part of them. They're very neat inside. There's going to be a fantastic landscaping park sort of event area called Bathurst Key Common. The Corlec building, which is the former offices of Canada Malting, will be turned into Cultural and Community Office of Canada Ireland Foundation. There'll be performance space, cafe, rooftop bar. That is on schedule to open in September of 2024. So it's coming up. It's going to be beautiful. I'm sure everybody will visit and enjoy it. Waterfront facilities for canoes and kayaks. I keep agitating for more storage space so people can use the water, get on it more easily. Ports Toronto in 24 will open a new rowing building, very nice, fancy building in the outer harbor on the north edge of the marina, kind of opposite Cherry Beach, a little bit east of that. Looks great. It's been under construction for a while. It's based on, it's for mainly UCC boys, Upper Canada College, based on a donation from Don Lindsay, longtime former CEO of Tech Resources, who I remember vaguely when I was a kid. Maybe one day there'll be a similar benefactor for paddlers. Paddlers are the ones who sit and go frontwards. Rowers go backwards. That's how you can tell the difference. Safety ladders. I always end with this. We need more safety ladders on the central part of the harbor. There are seawalls there. They can be 4, 5, 6 feet high. They often don't have ladders, or the ladders are falling down. So what happens if people fall in or get pushed in, or they're drunk, or they're little kids, or for whatever reason they're blind, they may not be able to get out. It can be a life-threatening problem. A lot of the year, half the year at least, the water is cold enough to kill you. When we had the big duck, for example, I love the duck, but people were crowding around the duck. There's a little kind of a railing that's about maybe 2 or 3 inches off the deck. You could have had somebody fall in. There are no ladders there. Maybe they could have scrambled them out. Have you ever tried to pull a 150-pound person out of the water up 6 feet with a safety hook? That would be very difficult, maybe impossible. So it's a life-threatening problem. And it needs to be fixed. Problem is multi-jurisdiction, many people in charge, too many cooks in the kitchen, but I hope we can get that fixed. I believe it is a very dangerous situation right now. And that's my roundup for this year.
Thanks very much, Ed. I know you had to squeeze a lot into a small space of time. We will put your presentation on the Waterfront for All website so people can review it and look at the content more closely. I know also that in your document you've included links to relevant areas of discussion, and among those you wanted to point out, I think, that there is a a survey or a place for public input that closes in the next 24 hours.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So
Um,
that's, I think I sent you the link for that, right? It
yeah,
is
I've just put the link in the chat.
okay, sorry, it's the
Yeah.
Toronto Western Beaches Public Life Study. You got to come by tomorrow, apparently.
Yeah, anybody who is interested in that can follow the link that I just dropped into the chat. All right, well, thank you very much. And I think we should move into the next phase of the meeting and look at our roundtable topics. We're going to be speaking on a few of them here: the Billy Bishop Airport lease renewal, Harbourfront, Ontario Place, Western Beaches, and West Scarborough Bluffs. You know, in a way, some of these are connected on issues of transparency, I would say. I would say that applies to Billy Bishop, Harbourfront, and Ontario Place in particular, where there's a lack of transparency and information for the public. Billy Bishop, of course, people have never really seen clearly into the economics of the airport or Porter Airlines and so on. But as the lease moves towards a renewal time, that's important. Harbourfront, of course, is opaque, is putting it nicely, and Ontario Place is, I would say, kind of enabled by a lack of transparency. So let's move into the first of these, the Billy Bishop Airport. And I think what I'd like to do, I was going to say a little bit about runway and safety areas, but because Ed, you already did, what I will do is just ask Brian Eiler to unmute himself and speak for a little bit on that topic.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ron. Interesting times. The tripartite agreement is really a lease from the city for a good piece and an essential piece of the Island Airport lands. It's been with nominal rent, $1 a year for the last 40 some years. It expires in 2033. We expect that, as Ed said, during the next year, this issue is going to become very hot. Ports Toronto is going to be desperate to get approval. We think they will try to bully the city to obtain an approval from the city for an extension of that lease so they can finance the runway and safety areas. It is so important that the city not succumb to that bullying and that a proper process for considering what the best public use of those lands is. They're owned by, they're public lands, and they should be, we should look very seriously at what's the best public use for that. So that's something that's going to happen. We did form an organization called Parks Not Planes that is focused on this issue, and we'd certainly like support from anybody who's interested in working on this issue.
Thanks, Brian. I don't know if maybe we can move on to the next of our major topics, Harbourfront. We will be, of course, revisiting this, the Island Airport topic soon again, because it is moving towards City Council now in the form of a proposal from staff to look at the Port Authority's desire to expand runway and safety areas, which could, I think, reasonably be seen as really just I don't know, an oyster knife to open up the tripartite agreement and start making changes that they want there. Next, let's take a look briefly at Harbourfront. Ed, you, I think, are the most conversant on this. If you could unmute yourself, we can hear a little bit more about what's happened there and what's going on and what we don't know is going on.
I don't have a lot to add. Harbourfront, there's an interesting parallel between Harbourfront and Ontario Place in the sense that They were both started around the same time, kind of in the early 1970s or late 1960s. One is the federal government, that's Harbourfront. The other, of course, the provincial government, that's Ontario Place. They're both of them kind of responses to Expo 67 and the Olympics and stuff in Montreal, Toronto being kind of the second city at the time. And so both have had the danger of sort of being, coming along well for a long time and then sort of starting to slowly run out of steam. Harbourfront is fairly opaque. There was a community liaison committee in the past. There was one, in fact, to do with the rink, but the people who were on that committee, such as Angelo Bertolis, who I think is with us tonight, were never told that they were considering removing the rink. The finances of Harbourfront are not made public. The board meetings are not public. So the decision to close down the rink was, nobody knew about it. And there's been no consultation, as I said, on the new plaza, unlike other projects along the waterfront where you tend to get a lot of, consultations, you get draft plans, there's a meeting, people weigh in, that kind of stuff. None of that happens at Harbourfront. There's some information available if you really look for it about financial problems. There was a large grant made to Harbourfront to pay for buildings and upkeep and so on, capital projects of about $20 million a couple of years ago. We don't really know what happened to that money. I think probably they just have a lot of bills because there's a lot of buildings, a lot of infrastructure, and it's all gradually degrading. The value of the asset is declining with time. It's kind of running out of steam. So something has got to change. It would be it could be a great and vibrant part of our city. Maybe it should be different. Maybe it should be more like, say, Granville Island in Vancouver, or more like the Distillery District, or different somehow. Should there be less of an, should it be the city involved? Hard to say, but I think the status quo is not working. They're also going to lose money from parking lots. Right now, Harbourfront is set up to get revenue from the Reese Street parking lot, and also, I believe, from the one further west towards the malting towers. And those are going to be turned into parks. So that revenue will disappear as well. It looks like it's time for a task force or some sort of rethink about it, or else the future does not look good.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Obviously, I think what you're really identifying is something that's heading in the wrong direction and could turn into a real public problem again on the waterfront. We've seen much better times for Harbourfront than we are currently seeing, and taking away the rink seems to be, removing its most public interaction with visitors on the waterfront. And at a time of year when the waterfront could have much more activity than it does, it doesn't have to be a summer thing. If we talk about it as a year-round activity on the waterfront, Harbourfront is well positioned to do that. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead next to Ontario Place, and I was looking, I was hoping that we might see Norm Di Pasquale here.
Yeah, this is Cindy
Oh, there's
Wilkie.
Cindy.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cindy, great, fantastic.
Yeah, so Norm is not here. Norm is taking a night off,
Okay,
and I'm here for Ontario Place for All. Yeah, so I think people probably are pretty familiar with this fight. We've been going on since 2019, and for people who don't know, Ontario Place for All was created by at a rally that was sponsored in part by Waterfront for All and Apart People, and also strongly supported by Joe Cressy, our counselor at the time, and Chris Glover, and so we have been fighting ever since to try to shape the future of Ontario Place in response to Premier Ford's announcement that they were going to redevelop Ontario Place. And so, as we know, and as mentioned already, the main focus of our advocacy is the Therme project on the West Island. which is 14.8 acres, and the Therme Spa, this giant Austrian spa, will occupy the entire footprint of the West Island, and is something like a 61,000 square meter spa facility, glass, etc. And in order to provide the required public access to the water's edge, there will be about 12 acres of lake filling around the outside of the West Island, which will then turn into a kind of hardscaped path around the outside of the spa, and that will be the publicly accessible part at the ground level. Thousands of people have joined up and in support of Ontario Place for All's core principles, which include keeping Ontario Place accessible and public, ensuring that public good, not commercial interests, determine the outcome, looking to preserve the heritage, the cultural heritage value of Ontario Place, which it takes more time than I've got today to talk about, but the landscape is an integral part of the cultural heritage of Ontario Place, which is an innovative modernist, mid-century modernist integration of engineering, architecture, and landscape in the water's edge. And it has been recognized internationally and nationally by a number of organizations, the importance of it, and including the province of Ontario, which is listed on as a cultural heritage site of provincial significance, which is the highest level of designation for the province. Nonetheless, the province is prepared to destroy that cultural heritage value by entirely obliterating the landscape design by Michael Huff. So what have we been doing? Well, we have a public campaign. Many of you have signed petitions, sent letters from our website, and supported us financially. We've sent over 30,000 letters to the Premier and the mayors and various ministers, etc. We, along with Waterfront for All and the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, we requested that the Auditor General complete a value for money audit once we started to learn about the economics of this site, much of which is very mysterious. But one of the things that we have learned that's notorious is that the province is committed to providing a development-ready site, which we estimate will cost about $100 to $200 million. And on top of that, has committed itself to building additional parking, which until recently was planned to be a 5-story underwater parking garage on the mainland at Ontario Place, with an estimated cost of at least $400 to $500 million. Completely outrageous, all in support of Therme, a private actor. More recently, Ontario Place for All commenced a judicial review application to challenge the fact that the West Island, and actually also Live Nation, but we focused on the West Island, the Therme site, was exempted from the province's environmental assessment that was done on the rest of Ontario Place, and which we feel it was not supported in law that it be exempted. And in response, that triggered then a legislative change that's part of Bill 159, which is the new deal for the City of Toronto. And that bill, which is now in effect, purports to legislatively exempt the West Island and I think the Live Nation site, but the West Island from the Environmental Assessment Act, from the Ontario Heritage Act, from any control by the province of Ontario or the city of Toronto in relation to construction, and also any control over noise and that kind of thing. So this has now been challenged by another group called Ontario Place Protectors, who have also filed a judicial review application challenging the legislation itself. The Auditor General has announced that a value for money audit will be conducted for Ontario Place. The whole financial deal, we've never seen a business case for it. The lease details have been hidden from the public. The only thing we've really learned is that there is supposedly a 95-year lease that's been given to Therme, and we've also learned more recently that this additional parking is part of the agreement with the province. At the city level, this whole development was going through a kind of typical city development process with indications that there were all kinds of concerns that have been identified by city staff, and some optimism on our part that in fact City Council would refuse to approve this development. But this has all been kind of thrown up in the air as a result of the recently announced agreement negotiated with Mayor Chow to deal with Ontario's finances, or Toronto's finances rather. So in a complicated deal with a number of goodies for Toronto, that the kind of bargaining chip that was thrown on the table was that the city would step back from opposing the Ontario Place development. So that was a blow of a big disappointment, because Olivia had been very vocal about supporting Ontario Place and protecting Ontario Place and supporting Ontario Place for All during the campaign. And we're just trying to figure out how we respond to this and what it does in fact to our litigation. But we aren't giving up. We're continuing to blast away. And one of the things that has happened through this is that it's possible that the parking garage is going to have to go somewhere else as a result of discussions with the province. And our big hope is that at some point Therme will just walk away. So that's where we're at. Still a huge uphill battle, but lots of energy to continue the fight. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Cindy. That's a really good overview. It's a bit of a travesty to watch the strategy of starving the city financially so that it can cave on things like Ontario Place, and I don't know what to say. Yes.
Can I just, I see that there's a comment in the chat. I didn't mention this about the tree cutting and that sort of thing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So this is this again would take more time than you probably want to spend. But just briefly, our judicial review was focused on tree cutting on the West Island only, right? And there's legal reasons for that, factual reasons, etc. This past weekend, the province started cutting some trees around the parking lot and around the Budweiser, the entrance to the Budweiser stage. And that was all part of a separate environmental assessment that was completed really outside of public view and approved by the province. And so we don't really have that kind of a hook to get at that tree cutting. But so that is probably going to continue. But there is there is a project with Ontario Place for All and others where people can sign up to be tree defenders, and we are going to continue to fight against the trees being cut down, even the ones that are for site servicing. That's what's happening right now, because we think that there hasn't been a very careful analysis. There hasn't been a focus on trying to preserve trees as much as possible. There's just they've taken the attitude of just make it as easy as possible for the constructors. Don't worry about the trees. We'll just replant what we're calling lollipop trees, like new seedlings, and that'll all be fine. So we are still trying to take action on the trees, but we can't stop this particular round of tree cutting.
Thanks, Cindy. People who are concerned about what's happening at Ontario Place should pay close attention to Ontario Place for All on Twitter and on the web. They're communicating a great deal of information and doing a great deal of advocacy for that site.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we've had strong support from the media, which is fantastic, and it continues. It really, nobody likes this project, but the Premier and Kinga Surma, it would seem.
Yeah, it's hard to see much positive feedback on the whole idea, but it seems to have a kind of weird momentum that matches the kind of weird momentum we see in moving the science center and things like that.
Yeah, it's clearly a pet project of the Premier's, and everyone has just fallen in line. There's no due diligence about this. It's just he wants to see it done. They do what he says, and he's basically pulling out all the stops, including this legislation that is quite outrageous in terms of the lines of protection it draws around this project that will prevent any kind of scrutiny. It even eliminates any kind of liability for anything that the province does. It's outrageous.
It sounds autocratic. I have a question in the chat here. Which councillors are backing Olivia Chow on Ontario Place?
I think we're hearing that the Conservative councillors are happy to have seen her make a deal that deals with the financial stuff and have no problem with ditching Ontario Place. But we don't really know, I think for sure, because there hasn't been a point at council where you clearly see who's backing her. But the usual Conservative folks, I think, have made approving noises about the deal anyway. But we'll see. I mean, it's not completely over at City Council.
All right. Thanks very much. Next, we'll look at the western beaches, and to do that, Rick Amos is here. What I'm going to do is set him up. I think you can share your screen, Rick, if you have. I will stop my share.
I actually don't have the stuff with me.
Oh, okay.
I sent it to you.
Yeah, I've got it here, so I'll go back and share it. Just a second. I've got a taskbar blocking my view here. 1 second. Okay, I hope people can see that.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I'm going to deal with another portion of the Western Waterfront, since Cindy's already talked about Ontario Place. So I'm gonna move a little bit north. So there's a lot of stuff happening on the west side, as you can see. Next slide. So this is a major project at Exhibition Place, Hotel X Phase 2. Phase 1 was completed a few years ago. It's a 29-story, 400-suite hotel. This is the Phase 2 of it. So it's going to take up a few more acres of Exhibition Place, which is 192 acres. So it's a 30-story hotel with 382 suites. That object on the bottom is a venue, esports performance venue, which will seat around 7,000 people. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the hotel and the event center looking east from Lakeshore Boulevard. So that'll give you an idea of what's going in. So lots of things happening. Next slide, please. So we have FIFA 2026 coming to Exhibition Place. It's going to take over BMO Stadium. BMO Stadium right now holds 30,000 seats. The minimum for a FIFA game is 45,000 seats. So they're going to have to increase the capacity of BMO Stadium by 50%. The conversation we've heard so far is that the installation will be temporary just for the event, and that it will be taken down. But we'll see. And next slide, please. So this is another shot of looking at the BMO field with all these excited Canadians celebrating, hopefully, Canadians in the FIFA game. Next slide. So this is one that came up recently last week, which is moving Therme to Exhibition Place. So this sort of dovetails into what Cindy was talking about. So it was recommended by the Exhibition Place Board of Governors to do a high-level feasibility study of Exhibition Place as the location for Therme. So what I'm showing you here is option 1. There was 3 options that were presented to the executive committee last week. This one just basically takes the size of Therme and places it where the Better Living building is. So this is just sort of taking the 45,000 square meters and plunking it over top of Better Living building, which obviously will have to be replaced. Next slide, please. So this is another version of it. This is option 2, which is of the spa again, plus another outbuilding to give you some idea of what's going on. So the next slide will show you an overlay of what Therme looks like, the proposal for Therme on the West Island, superimposed on top of Better Living building. You'll see a little mark there. It says hydro substation. So there is a underground hydro substation, which obviously would have to be removed. So the part of all our concern was that for the last 8 or so years, the community's been arguing that there always seems to be this ad hoc approach to dealing with Exhibition Place grounds. So we've attempted to get rid of that approach. And what's happened is the Exhibition Place master plan was implemented. Phase 1 has been completed just before COVID. And the whole idea is to get rid of this ad hoc approach. So from our position, this again is that ad hoc approach. Oh, let's take Therme and place it here. Well, is there a conversation? Is there any kind of information going out to the community? No, it just seems to be a decision that's made and we have to deal with it. So at last week's meeting of Exhibition Place Therme feasibility study, At least it was only received by the executive committee for Exhibition Place. So thankfully, this probably won't happen. But what Cindy brought up was there is the possibility that the parking, the 2,000 underground parking that's going to be applied below the lakeshore could possibly be put up here. So that's something that we're aware of and is a big concern for the community, and trying to attempt to get rid of this ad hoc where Exhibition Place just seems to be a placemat for somebody's ideas. Next slide, please. So this is the western beaches looking an aerial view. So this is where I live in Parkdale. So great to come down here. So there is a master plan that's been implemented. It started in 2009, and the next slide will show you a layout of it. So this is the master plan from 2009. And what you see here is mostly a shore. We're not looking at the waters side of the waterfront. We're looking at the land side. So part of this was to push Lakeshore Boulevard up towards the Gardner Expressway. There's a big boulevard. We don't really need that big boulevard between those east-west lanes. So that's the plan. As I said, it's been here since 2009. And the next slide will show you what's proposed for the Western Beaches Public Realm Plan, which the deadline is tomorrow. So please send your comments in. I attended the Webster meeting along with Ed Hoare, and what I became aware of, because I'm a land lover and I dipped my toe in Lake Ontario, that there was this whole other population that was there that was from the other side, which were on the water. And it was impressive to hear their comments and the love that they have for this area, same way I have a love for it. So it made me very conscious of what is required and needed along the shoreline here. The next slide will show you what Walter Kim came up with a number of years ago, Humber Bay for All. And you'll notice that over towards the Humber Bay end are all these great little islands. So some of them are recreational islands and some of them are habitat islands. So sorry, people aren't allowed. It's just for the birds and the beavers, etc. So this is Walter Kim's proposal, and I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rick. There was one question I saw in the chat asking what Ozma Malik thought about this.
Well, it was Ozma Malik that made the proposal to the Board of Governors. Ozma is the chair of Exhibition Place, and it was her that brought this proposal forward to the Exhibition Place board, and it was approved. I just wanted to make one clarification that Ed brought up, and he was talking about the CNE master plan. It's actually an Exhibition Place master plan, and just to remind people that the CNE now is just a tenant for 18 days of the year on the Exhibition Place grounds. So one of our big concerns with this site and what was being proposed was, 144 years of the CNE and 101 years of the Royal Winter Fair. This site has the horse palace, the horticultural building, etc. We do not want to see those organizations move out of Toronto. And I think the spa moving here would jeopardize that. So just to give you a heads up.
Thanks very much, Rick. Moving from the west to the other west, we have the West Scarborough Bluffs to look at. And if I can find Edward Nixon. Hello, is Edward here?
Hi there, kiddo.
Okay, good.
Groovy. Okay, so um, if you could unshare your screen, I'll share mine, and maybe if you can pin me. Okay, so here we go. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, everyone, for those great presentations. I thought actually I would just have a quick. I'll just Ed mentioned this, and I know we've done events on it, but this is the Ashbridges Bay landform, also TRCA and City of Toronto project. One day, so as you can see, there's this is a picture. You can see the old power plant there. You can see the southern part of Leslie Spit, and you can see the Ashbridges Bay area here, plant waste part of the waste facility there, and on the right hand side of the picture. And this is the lake. This is what they filled in. And one day, in the fullness of time, there will be a public path around here, so you'll be able to walk the perimeter of this. And there will be a TRCA and City of Toronto consultation process around that in due course. Exactly when that happens, we don't know yet. When we know, you'll know. And I just wanted to point that out. So let's talk about the vast part of the City of Toronto waterfront, which runs along the Scarborough coastline. Before we get to the western part of the Scarborough Bluffs project, I know Ed mentioned it, and thanks to that for Ed, there is the Scarborough waterfront project, which goes from East Point Park. I'm going to just zoom out. Can you see the map? Wave at me if you can see the
Yes.
map. Yeah,
Yes.
great. Yay! So I'm going to zoom out. So there you go. If you see the entire waterfront, it's good to always do this, right? Oh, look. So the entire waterfront is, basically this is the Scarborough waterfront right here, right? And this is the rest of the waterfront. So that's the scale we're talking about, right? So the existing Scarborough waterfront project is putting trails and erosion control measures, noting, of course, that while people who have visited the top of any of the many parks along the top of the bluffs, or ever known a friend who lived on the bluffs, people will tend to think of the erosion of the bluffs at the top, but the erosion actually happens from the bottom. So this is going. So the project that's been approved and that is slowly but surely getting underway provides a new access point at East Point Park, so people can have If you've ever been to East Point Park, and I heartily recommend it, you sort of have to scramble down the bluffs. Now the bluffs at East Point Park are fairly low. They're sort of like two. They're like sort of two adults. They're about 12 to 18 feet tall. But you have to sort of scramble down them, and there will be a proper lookout and a path there, and there will be there is already some continuous path and beach along here. That's going to get improved, so you'll be able to walk from basically Rouge Beach through Port Union to East Point Park and all the way along here to Bluffers Beach. The other thing that Ed mentioned it. One of the first pieces of business is they're going to provide more sand at Bluffers Park Beach, and they're going to connect the section that's between around below Cudia Park here. They're going to connect this section here, so you'll be able to walk along here. Because right now, if you go to the very end of Bluffers Park, the far eastern edge of Bluffers Park Beach, eventually you're going to get your feet wet. And they're going to fill this in with more sand and pathway, so you'll actually be able to walk along there continuously. They're going to improve the beach. And as Ed said, they are going to provide a proper sidewalk all the way down Brimley Road South. Because, again, if you haven't visited Bluffers Park, or especially if you haven't in the last 5 years, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people actually walk all the way down this road. Partially it's because in the summertime, usually especially on weekends or in the summertime, it could be any day of the week. By a certain point in the afternoon, the police block off access to motor vehicles, and you basically the only way you can get down is to walk, bike, or take the summer bus service, which the TDC provides only in the summer to take you down to the beach. So, many people walk down here and they're basically walking on the edge of the road. There is no proper sidewalk. So that's one of the projects. Now that takes you to here. And then we have this, Bluffers Park, and then you get here. Now this is another section where, this is the West Scarborough Bluff section. I guess I'll have to zoom in a bit. So it goes basically, this is so huge, I can't even squeeze it in the map. It basically goes from here, right there, where it says Jason's Round. That's the point of Bluffers the Park, the south west part of Bluffers Park. It goes all the way along here, all the way here to the RC Harris filtration plant. And that was what TRCA was going to look at for the West Scarborough Bluffs project. Again, focused on creating a continuous navigable path for pedestrians, for hikers, for walkers, and addressing erosion control, with a mixture of groins and breakwaters, and preserving as much natural beach as possible. So those were sort of the ideas in the back of their minds. But then the city of Toronto said, "Well, hang on a second. The boardwalk at the beach ends at Silver Birch. Can we find basically right here, right? Ends right there." And so they said, well, why don't we think about adding this in and doing something here to create more of a navigable path? So now the West Scarborough Bluffs revitalization project goes from Silver Birch and to all the way here. Now, at the present moment, if you've ever been to Birchcliff and Scarborough Southwest, you may know that, or you may know this, you may not. If you go here, it's Kingston Road, and just east of Birchmount Road, and Rosetta McLean Gardens, which is one of our lovely park. If you were biking, walking, or driving along here, you could simply take a right turn and go off Glen Everest, find a place to park, or you could park in Rosetta McLean Gardens if you were driving, or you could take your bike with you or walk. You can actually take the number 12 TTC bus and get off. There's a bus stop around here, and you can walk. Oh, look, you can walk down this path here all the way down to the waterfront. And it is at present, it is possible to kind of walk almost to the RC Harris filtration plant, almost. Though there is a section just to the east of the filtration plant that's been closed off with fencing because it's kind of sketchy and a little bit dangerous there. But you can certainly walk this way. You walk eastward, and you can one of the most beautiful views of the Scarborough Bluffs, which is actually a picture on the Waterfront for All website taken by yours truly. But again, you can't get to Bluffers Park without getting your feet wet, and also it's kind of dangerous because there's fairly constant falling rock along here. So it's not recommended, but so this is the area they're going to look at. The City of Toronto has this Scarborough Bluffs West Revitalization Study information page. There have been 3 meetings with, there have been 3 pre-meetings with people with, I'll be frank, landowners, which have not been public. They've been by invitation only to people who own land along the top of the bluffs between Bluffers Park and Fallingbrook Road. There will be public meetings in January, yet to be scheduled and announced, and there will be a stakeholder advisory group, which Waterfront for All is seeking representation on, because we believe very strongly that the Bluffs is a resource for the entire city, and while it's incredibly important to have a focus on it from local people naturally, we're going to certainly be speaking to the fact that we need to keep in mind the broader public interest and public access along, balancing that with ecological sensitivity and of course the purpose to the sort of engineering purpose of all of this, which is to mitigate erosion. So that's where that's where that's at. And again, I recommend you go to the Google City of Toronto Scarborough Bluffs. I'll put the link in the chat. Actually, I'll just put the link in the chat. And it is a major project, and it takes up a huge section of the waterfront. and we're looking forward to participating in this. I'm afraid I'm not able to I've been requested by TRCA and the city not to share the slide deck that I got at the meeting that I just described a minute ago. So unfortunately, I'm not able to share that. But what I can say to you is the relevant information is essentially on the website that I'm sharing with you now. So I would recommend, if you're curious or interested, and certainly I think if you just because you don't live here doesn't mean you shouldn't have input or comment, and you can certainly reach out and contact the relevant people here. Caitlin Northam, Senior Public Consultation Coordinator, phone number and email address right there. So I would strongly recommend anyone who's curious or interested to get involved. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening. It's a pleasure to see everybody. And I'm just going to stop the share. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to our host.
Thanks very much, Edward. That was informative on an area of the city waterfront that we too seldom see. And, you know it well, but I think I know that I don't. I've only seen it really from the water. And of course, access to much of that waterfront is a little hard to reach. Okay, I'm going to move us along to, I hope you can see the screen I'm sharing. Somehow it's called number 2. I don't want to share that. Okay, I'm assuming that you can see the lakefront there.
No, we can't.
Okay, then I have to unshare something. Excuse me for a moment. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we're moving to the business side of this this evening, and it's the Waterfront for All annual meeting. It's the voting agents in this meeting are representatives for partner organizations, but we do have items of interest to you as individuals as well. So although I don't hesitate to bore you with this stuff, nevertheless, please feel free to stick around and we'll try to move through it quickly. The partner organizations are listed here, and I'll put this slide deck up. We've heard from some people in some of these organizations already, and they represent a lot of people in the city. So our agenda, such as it is, comes now to the phase of approval of the minutes of the meeting and voting on a few motions. These are the minutes of the 2022 AGM, and all I need is really, I think, a show of hands to pass this if people want to move it from draft to final. Thank you. Next, we have motions that I'd like Edward to speak about, because there's a little bit more to say here than the last couple of things. These are motions to change the membership structure here. I'll give the upper level view and simply say to change the membership structure from member organizations to include also capacity for individual membership.
Right. Well, thanks. So I came out now. I spent 20 years in St. Lawrence, in the St. Lawrence neighborhood where we were, and of course, in St. Lawrence, and also our neighborhood, our next door neighborhood in Corktown, and as Cindy can attest, we were sort of all experts in having organizations that were made up of organizations. So it is a great model, and it can provide a lot of strength. I know the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association, being primarily in an area where there are no houses, there's some townhouses, but basically almost everybody lives in a building. You know, it was great to have the member of the neighborhood association be a condo or co-op board, because we found out that once we got into their annual budget, you know, that membership fee kept on coming every year. You know, so that there's always that. I know Rick's laughing. It's like, yeah, $100 to this SLA. We don't know what that's for, but let's just send them a check. But you know, the thing we've noticed is that there are parts, believe it or not, I know it seems hard, given Toronto's fairly rich civic culture. There are parts of the waterfront where there are really neighborhood groups, or there isn't really a waterfront focus group, or where there's people who are involved, or to be, if I may have your collective permission to speak frankly, where there may be people who quite understandably belong to an organization that's focused on their local neighborhood and their local patch of the waterfront, and may feel that their capacity and their interest is really so just local. But but sometimes we bump into one or two people who happen to live in that same area who'd like to get their hands, involved in a group that looks at individual areas of the waterfront, as we've described this evening, but also is trying in our own modest way, bit by bit by bit, to sort of get a consciousness of as Ed Hoare said, the 46 kilometers of our waterfront from the Etobicoke Creek to the Rouge. And so I thought, well, what yes, we can ask people we can have them get involved. I mean, right now, anyone can be nominated to be on the board. You don't have to be from a member organization. You don't have to specifically necessarily, quote unquote, represent. You have to be voted on by the membership, by the designated person who represents the member organization. They have to nominate you and approve you and vote for you. So we're already sort of, you might say we're sort of halfway there. I thought, well, why not open it up to people to join as individuals? Now, how this is going to play out at our next AGM exactly in terms of how the voting system will work, I am willing to suggest we can roll the dice on that, and we have a year to 18 months, because we don't have to have an AGM we can have an AGM 18 months from now if we wish, though we may well do it in 12 months, to figure it out, right? To figure it out. And I think we can manage it. I think this gives us an opportunity for people who, again, are in an area where there is no particularly organized group that's got a waterfront focus, or an area where the existing group is quite understandably solely focused on their immediate issues, but someone would like to come and say, I want to be part of Waterfront for All. I want to sit on a committee. I want to sit on a board. I want to help organize events, etc. So that's where this comes from, and I would, recommend that we adopt it. Thank you.
I'd like to move that we adopt the motion.
Okay, have we got a seconder for that?
Diana.
Diana? Okay. Can I have a show of hands? I see Rick. I see Ed. I see Anna, Edward, Cindy. Okay. Okay, I'm going to declare the motion passed, and we'll move to the next topic, which is the treasurer's report. As you can see, there is probably not enough money in Waterfront for All to build an underwater parking garage yet. What is it there? $976.60 as of the end of November. This money, as I mentioned at the beginning, carries us forward on our website and the ability to host Zoom meetings. And that's pretty much all.
Unfortunately, for anyone thinking of joining the board, this does not cover an annual board retreat in Bermuda, sadly.
No, it doesn't actually. Doesn't, or even coffee for that matter. Okay, anyway, if people are content with that treasurer's report, can I just get a motion to adopt. That's Edward. And a seconder, Julie. Okay, and a show of hands. Great. Thank you all. Next item. Proposed board of directors. At this point too, we can ask if there are any nominations from the floor. This is a board of directors essentially corresponding to the existing board. So I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody is contributing to that question. Okay. Seeing none, can I have somebody to move that this proposed slate of directors be adopted? Okay, Cindy Wilkie is moving it, and a seconder. Rick, I see you there. Okay. And a show of hands on the adoption. Thank you all. I see hands raised. So we call that adopted. And actually, maybe before I beg for more money, I would just say, ask the question, is there any other business for the meeting? Ed, are you raising your hand for that?
Ed wants your money. Ed would like to have your credit card number and your expiry date and your CVS number at the back, right?
You're unmuted now, Ed. Were you asking for any other business for the meeting?
Yes, well, I wanted to say one thing, which is that I first of all wanted to, of course, thank everybody for coming and for Ron, your great work, and our other presenters. The other thing is I really hope that we will have a face-to-face meeting to get more acquainted. We've quite a number of people come to these meetings that we've never really met face-to-face. We really would like to. I think it's kind of an important way for people to get in touch with each other. Zoom is, of course, never really satisfactory in that respect. So I hope that we'll get that set up, and I hope that people will come, and we'll just sort of get more acquainted than we have been. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly agree. I mean, many of us know each other from the before times, and it would be nice to extend our circle. And of course, as a tool in doing that, I will just point out again where you can donate to Waterfront for All. Okay, well, I will also say thanks to the attendees. Thanks to the Waterfront for All board who carry on, and thanks also to our supporters, because we do have them, and contributors through the donate button are among those. So thank you for all your attention this evening, and watch for the next item in our speaker series. There'll probably be some flaming hot topic like Ontario Place or the airport. Okay.
Right, maybe we need 7 airports in Toronto.
Yes.
all at the exhibition grounds.
That is one option we can consider, is having multiple airports, for sure.
Multiple airports, none of them on the waterfront. Yeah.
Oh, several on the waterfront. That's another one.
Move the spa to Buttonville Airport.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Bye.